All right, rates and unit rates. So you guys have actually heard the word rate before. A rate is a special type of ratio that compares quantities to units of measurement, usually time. A lot of times when we talk about rate, we talk about how fast or slow something is done, how often it's done. So rates are typically written in fraction form, but it doesn't look like just a fraction because you also need to include labels for units. Feet, yards, hours, minutes, cups, things like that. So that's our first definition. A rate's just a special type of ratio that tells us pretty much how often something is done. A unit rate is a rate with a comparison of one unit, meaning broken down so that it's just a decimal point of 1. So if I were saying, well, we'll get to that in a second. You can represent a rate as a unit rate by making equivalent fractions with the denominator of 1. This is often going to leave us with a decimal as your, fix that, numerator. Then we just need to make sure we include units of measurement in our label. And we want to make sure they match up. Just like we were talking about with ratios, whatever unit went with the first number, it's going to stay first. And then we're going to use the word per, and then we're going to add the second unit of measurement after that. All right, that sounds probably pretty confusing, but once we jump into it, I think you guys are going to start to see. If not, you're going to at least be able to try this tonight for homework. So if we were traveling 20 miles in 4 minutes, how would I write that as a rate? Is the first one I want to do. So basically, I'm just going to write that as a fraction. I traveled 20 miles in 4 minutes. Kind of like a ratio form, except the only difference with my fraction here is I have 2 units. I have miles and I have minutes. Now they want me to write that as a unit rate, which means I have to pretty much just figure out how often I went in 1 minute. So I want the bottom to be 1 minute. If I went 20 miles per 4 minutes, how many miles did I go per minute? Well, how did I get from 4 to 1? We're just making an equivalent fraction here. I'm getting smaller, so I know I'm going to divide by 4. I'm just dividing by 4. I can't divide minutes, so my minutes is just going to come right over. Whatever I do to the bottom, I got to do to the top. So 20 divided by 4 is going to give me 5, and this should be miles. So this is my rate, and this is my unit rate. Because if I asked how fast did I go, I could just say 5 miles per minute. All right, this is all you're doing today. You're writing the rate and then finding the unit rate. Writing the rate is actually pretty easy because you're just writing a ratio. The only reason it looks different is because you have to make sure your units are here. Writing your unit rate is just like finding an equivalent fraction. You just want to make sure, again, you keep your units the same. So over here, I want you guys to pause it and try that one. All right, so we ran 18 laps in 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and write that as our rate. Notice I'm labeling them. I need you to label them too so I know which is which. 18 laps in 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, I can run 18 laps. I want to know what that is per minute. So I know I'm going to want 1 minute as my bottom. You're not always going to see units of time, but you will often see that when we talk about rate. So I have to figure out how I got from 5 to 1. Well, I'm just going to divide by 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I got to do to the top. I don't know 18 divided by 5 off the top of my head, so I'm going to come over here and do 18 divided by 5. That's going to go in 3 times. That's going to give me 15. When I subtract, I'm going to end up with 3. I don't want a remainder, so I'm going to add that decimal with my 0 and bring that 0 down. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. When I subtract, I get 0, so I'm done. But I got to make sure I add that decimal point up top. 18 divided by 5 was 3.6. And I want to make sure my unit, which is laps in this case, makes sense. If I wanted to check, I could multiply 3.6 times 5, and that should give me 18. The only other thing I need to do here is write unit rate over the top. Down here you have 6 problems to try. I should see rate and unit rate written above every one. Do not just write R, do not just write UR. Write the word rate and the word unit rate so I know which one is which. If you do not do that, it will not be counted as completed. Have a good night.